Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. J'ai décidé de faire ma présentation en français ce matin. C'est très bien. So, I'm joking. Although I'm French, I'll do my presentation in English. If there's a question in French and English, don't be shy to ask your question in the language of your choice, but please limit it to French and English, or English, because I may not be able to answer in any other one, unfortunately. I'm still working on a few other, but I speak French and English, but I'm quite happy to be here this morning. How many of you know about translation in Canada, the translation industry in Canada? There's a fair amount of you that knows the industry, translation, interpretation industry in Canada. Quite interesting. My name is Stéphane Derry, and I'm the CEO of the Translation Bureau of the Government of Canada. So I'm not here to sell you anything. That may be a little bit different. I'm here to present you how does it work in Canada. To be honest, it's a pleasure for me to be here today and to talk to you about our reality, our focus on quality, and why it may be different or not from your focus on quality depending on your reality. I even brought with me my colleague Lucie Séguin, who's our Corporate Services VP, Vice President of Corporate Services, and just listen to what I say now, but it's quite important. She's in charge of all contracting that we do with the private sector. So if there's a name, if you're interested to work with the Government of Canada, if there's a name you need to remember, it's not mine, it's hers. So if you're interested in working with us, just come and say hi at the end, and we can talk, exchange business card. As I said, we're not here to sell you anything, but we have, if you have an interest in working with us in French, English, and I would say also in multilingual or in indigenous languages, come and say hi to us and we can chat. In order to provide you the reasoning of our focus on quality, I have to bring you through a little bit of history around official languages in Canada, the Translation Bureau itself, and the language industry in Canada. Interesting enough, equal quality content in French and English is not discretionary in Canada. It is constitutional right for every Canadian. What do I mean by that is basically, and I have to speak in the mic, so I'll stay here. Basically, we have to produce quality product in Canada because Canadians are entitled to get everything that's produced by government or an agency of government or some crown corporation like Air Canada at some point in French and English of equal quality. So when I'm reading an article that talks about people are looking for, they're translating, they're going faster and faster in translation, how can they produce more? We do that in Canada, we may have some problem. And I'll explain to you a little bit why. Since 1969, the year of the Royal Assent of the Official Languages Act, citizens have the right, as I said, to receive services, all services from federal government organization in the official languages of their choice, either in French or English of equal quality. This act was put in place by Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was the father of our current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So later on, we'll see what Justin Trudeau thinks about official languages and translation. Just imagine all the volume of content generated by the Government of Canada, our court, our justice system, our national security agency, our public health authority, if published to Canadian or to public servant, it has to be of equal quality in both official languages. The best thing in Canada would be co-creation, if we could get it, if we could do it. Basically, writing document in French and English at the same time. Totally different than taking a document and sending it to just to translation. Every deputy head in our government department and agency or the president of all our agency are responsible for the quality of their official languages within their agency. And everything they're publishing makes a total different focus on quality, because in addition to that, Canada, we also have what's called the Commissioner of Official Languages. We call him, our friend, the Canada's language watchdog. He ensures that Canadian citizens are properly served in the language of their choice. If you're Canadian and you feel that you need to be served in English in Quebec and you don't receive the service in English by the federal government or one of its agencies, you can file a complaint to the Commissioner of Official Languages. He will then make an investigation, and from his finding will make recommendation to the federal government in order for them to take action to rectify the situation. So it's ingrained in our DNA that we have the right to be served in the language of our choice. And if you don't produce, and I'm not sure if you see that in the States or in other countries, but if we don't produce a lot of, I would say that in Canada, 90% of the translation is done from English to French for the government, because we work a lot in English, so about 10% of the documents are written in English, in French, and translated to English. So if we don't do a good enough translation from English to French or from French to English, chances are you'll end up in the paper somewhere, because it's a right. And somebody somewhere in Canada will raise their hand and, how come I cannot get this document of the same quality? Now, we're not talking about the instruction to build a cabinet that you bought at the store and in pieces, and you try to put it together. You try in English, you try in Chinese, you can't, no matter how you look at it, you can't put it together. So then you read the instruction. But it's basically a right, and we have to live with it. Just think about an example. All federal court ruling must be translated from French to English or from English to French in order to be accessible. This is court ruling. Means that it's also precedent setting. So an English judgment will be used in the French court as a precedent setting. If it's not translated properly, what's going to happen? Think about the contracting that the federal government of Canada does. We do about, I would say, $18 billion of procurement a year. Not that much when you think about it, but still a fair amount. Most of our contracts need to be produced in French and English. I used to be a supplier to the government of Canada a few years ago, and the company I used to work for was quite happy to have me as a francophone working for them, because they wanted me to read the specs and the document in French to see if they were saying the same thing in English, and then we would bid on whatever is best for the company, right? If it's advantageous to do it in French, we would do it in French, right? This is probably why Canadian language industry is approximately 10%, 3.8 billion of the total worldwide language industry, with a lot less than 10% of the population. We have 37 million people in Canada, but we have approximately 10% of the total global market of translation and in the language industry, translation and interpretation. Now, what about the role of the Translation Bureau in all of this, right? Talk about the law, talk about all kinds of stuff. The role of the Bureau is to provide translation, terminology, and interpretation services to support the use of both official languages in the federal government and in Parliament. It also acts as a center of expertise for language technology to support efficient and quality bilingual communication for citizens and across the public service. Now, I think I'm supposed to change slide. Yes. Based on previous slide and as legislated, we must offer services from cradle to grave across multiple channels on a 24/7 basis to all audience. This is our commitment and what our legislation says. So we're not a company incorporated. We have an act and we have to respond to government requirement. Interesting point, our legislation does not give us the opportunity to refuse work and to say no to a department, to an agency, and say, no, we're not doing that. No, it's too late, we're sorry. We have to support all federal institutions that request it, and that means at any hours of the day, night, weekend. Any bill that goes to Parliament, that goes to committee in Parliament, has to be in English and French. So we have to have high security facility in order to be able to translate document that goes to cabinet, document that will be law, but nobody knows about it. So our people have to be, and some of our suppliers have to be top secret in order to work with us on these documents. Some of them have to come and work on premises. So it's a different reality. I see it as a different reality than a private sector trying to sell its services to another interested buyer. In addition to translation, interpretation, and terminology services to government, the Bureau supports the delivery of official languages communication for Parliament. This is a major aspect of our mandate. We offer services to over 12,000 events a year. I'm talking simultaneous translation or interpretation. So if you know anybody that's interested into becoming an interpreter in Canada, English and French, official languages, there's a lack of interpreter. We don't have enough just for Parliament. The Translation Bureau works with the Ottawa University to teach. We have our own staff teach a master in interpretation, conference interpretation. So if any of you, your students, are interested to travel with the Prime Minister to interpret and all that kind of stuff, just come and see me after. If you pass the exam, there may be an opportunity for you at Ottawa U to learn to be a conference interpreter. With these obligations, quality means equipping our business with the right resources at the right time, with the right skill to meet the diverse client expectation in an evolving professional and technological landscape. Translation Bureau is the largest employer of translator in Canada. We have 1,200 employees. Interesting fact, that's not on the slide, is that the Translation Bureau was created in 1934. If I'm not mistaken, 1934, I said, yeah. If I'm not mistaken, it's even before any university in Canada had translation program. The first one was started in 1940. So in Canada, the Translation Bureau helped to structure the industry, and still today is a strong force in the translation industry in Canada. It seems kind of a flagship. It's an institution, 80-some years old, and has some flagship product that are known around the world. And I'll have a chance to talk to you a little bit about these later. Translation Bureau translate more than 325 million words a year. Last year was 335, in fact, in all kinds of domains. So legal, nuclear science, medical science, national defense, name it, we're almost in everything. Another interesting fact is we outsource 40% of our work to the private sector, which help us meet the fluctuating demand of the government and ensure high quality standards are respected. The last bullet on this slide talks about the Language Portal of Canada, and I have a little banner here of the Language Portal of Canada. This is a flagship product of the Bureau. It's a one-stop window which gives you free access to language, product, quizzes, tests, name it, it's all there. It's used in 220 countries around the world, and on top of that, it's free of charge. What is free today? Not too many things. So I invite you to visit the Portal of Canada, and also you may want to look at another one of our, inside the portal, you'll see Termium Plus. Anybody knows Termium here? Oh my God, okay. It's a fair amount of people. This is one of the, I'm surprised, right? I was expecting this table, I know Fabien to raise his hand, because I'm surprised, you know, but I shouldn't be, because it's one of the largest terminology and linguistic data bank in the world, which give you access to millions of terms in English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and some indigenous languages. You can find terms, abbreviation, definition, and usage example in a wide range of specialized field. Termium is search, and I was even surprised a couple of weeks ago when my kind of internal statistician brought the stat to me. Termium is searched 100,000 times a day, and this 365 days a year. So over approximately 3 million times a month, this database is searched from 220 countries around the world. You know, and it's all for free. At one point, the Canadian government is following an evolution. At one point, we used to sell those on CDs, I believe, before my time. You know, don't be too hard on me, by the way. I've just been at the Bureau for 9 months, so I'm kind of new. But I know my wife used to work there, imagine, and we used to sell those CD to everybody that wanted one. Today, it's all there for free, funded by the Government of Canada. Quality standards should not be compromised by the integration of digital transformation. We hear a lot today about digital transformation, tools, free access online, rapid translation. Technology should serve as an enabler to allow a language professional to do their work more efficiently and to ensure content consistency. As I said earlier, I give 40% of our work to the private sector. So there's a significant amount of money that flows from the Translation Bureau to the private sector. And yes, sometimes we receive texts that are machine translated and not post-edited. There's nobody that reads those texts. They're just sending them back to us as they get them out of Google Translate or something else. And nothing against Google Translate, that's not what I'm saying. Well, there's some kind, professional translators should be there to review these texts and ensure they're of proper quality. That's what we're asking in Canada. Approximately 5 years ago, Translation Bureau entered into a transformation phase, focused on cost containment and cost reduction. We were thinking that by bundling our contract with the private sector and relying heavily on technology, we would be able to get everything cheaper and of equal quality. And this is maybe what's happening around the world and in many countries, that will get things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. But at some point, the quality has to suffer. Because at some point, if you don't have time to have a professional translator looking at what's being produced, chances are, at some point, there will be a lack of quality. And at some point, you'll meet a client that doesn't like what you have provided them. And if you're dealing private sector to private sector, probably you won't do business with them for too long. In the federal, it's a little bit different. And there's a lot of process in order to get rid of a supplier. But anyway, that's the life in Canada. But there's still a requirement for quality. At that time, 5 years ago, we had an idea of it's good enough. Well, that didn't resonate well with Canadians. And we started to see article in newspaper after article in newspaper saying, here's how the government is treating their equal partner, either Francophone or Anglophone, depending on where you are in the country, because the translation of material was terrible, was not of quality. This led to the erosion of quality of services provided by the Bureau. And as I said, this was not exactly what Canadians were looking for. Paper and all that, it ended up on the Hill in Parliament Hill. And that's not why they hired me. That's when I got hired. And they've asked me to bring the pendulum back, not totally the other way, to $1 a word. I know a lot of people would be happy with that, translating for $1 a word or €1 per word. They would be quite happy. Not that, but bringing the pendulum swing to the right place. quality is important. In October 2017, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's the son of the Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who enacted the Official Languages Act in 1969, so said to our minister, continue to implement reform that will enhance the quality and capacity of services delivered by the Translation Bureau and promote the economic vitality of Canada translation and interpretation community as the government and industry adapt to rapid digital transformation. I couldn't have written that better myself. So thank you, Prime Minister. In my entire life, this is the first time I see a Prime Minister writing in a mandate letter to a minister about translation, interpretation. That tells you how dear to his heart languages, official languages, are close they are to his heart. So, I mean, we are based on that, based on this mandate letter, we started establishing a modernized vision for the Translation Bureau. With at its core, our employee and, of course, our client we need to serve. How can we deliver translation? And this is good for government, this is good for private enterprise. How can you deliver quality translation, terminology, and interpretation if our employee or your employee are not engaged and happy to contribute to the success of the organization? We learned that disengaged employee, I'm talking about the 5 years before, do not equal productivity and do not equal quality product. There's a meaning. Translators are professional. You know, they are a professional trade, or I would not call them a trade, but they're professional like lawyers, like anybody else, a profession. And they have, là, les mots me viennent en français, je ne sais pas pourquoi. I'll need a translator and interpreter to interpret. Lucy, good at that.
No problem.
I mean, they are proud of the work they do. And when you crunch them, you push them, you push them, you push them, you push them. At some point, there's no more professionalism, and you get not what you pay for, but you push them in a corner. So the satisfaction of employee is extremely important. The client are also at the core of our new vision, because without client, we have no business. Although I'm not a company to make a profit, I'm also a cost recovery organization, and government department pay me for what I do for them. Well, that's what we realized, that the relationship between the employee, the supplier, in some case you here in the room, and the client, it's what makes the system works and guarantees quality relationship and quality product. Everywhere we can, when there's enough business volume, I will co-locate my translator with my client. I was talking about co-creation, ensuring quality. What is better than having a translator either dedicated physically sitting with the client or virtually, right? Because realistically, I can have an employee in every single office. But if they're virtually dedicated to, and a supplier dedicated to this client, they're working with a client all the time. It's a little bit what happened in the private sector, but they know more of the word than the words they need to translate. They know their meaning, they know their preference, linguistic preference, they understand. They even can finish their sentence. Then they can maybe co-create. Many of my translators are co-located with client in their communication team. What do? Or you put a publicity campaign in English and you say, well, translate that in French. Well, you translate it in French. Oh, it's a wah wah in English, a ray. Oh, yeah, I love it. In French, it's a. Well, maybe our linguists professional could help write the English version of the ad so it sounds as good in English than in French. And that's where we're trying to move to. And that closeness ensures quality. Clients love it, they like it, they understand, they get to know the person they're working with either, and I'm talking employee or supplier, they get to know them, they get to provide, they get to understand, they get to trust them, they get their feedback. So in not only translating, but correcting English text or French text, the original text, to say, well, maybe you want to say this like this, if that's the message you're trying to carry across, right? This is, why the client are at the core of this new vision, in order to ensure that they're well served. In addition to quality output, we need to focus on timeliness of delivery. You can produce the best text, but if it's an hour too late or 2 hours too late, the client's going to say, well, I don't need it anymore, thank you very much. I'll pay you anyway because I don't have a choice. I would prefer not to. But anyway, I will pay you, but the client's going to say, thank you, I needed it an hour earlier, not now. So we need to produce quality product, timeliness of product. In order to implement this vision, we have developed 4 axes that I'll quickly go through just to give you a sense of where we're going. And if you have an interest in working with us, helping us to accomplish that vision, or at least partnering with us, exchanging best practices. Quality delivery of service depend on strong and regular outreach effort that contribute to building agility in our business model to suit changing client needs. Strengthening links. With this component, the Bureau wishes to strengthen internal and external relationship. It is regularly engaging with the various language stakeholders to consult and inform on progress. This includes working closely with clients, as I mentioned earlier, but working closely also with industry and association, university, and other countries to identify best practices, standards that lend themselves to ensuring client expectations are met. 25 minutes. In, okay, thank you. I thought. Good.
You're doing well. It's doing very well.
Ben, je vais parler en français, ça va aller plus vite. Je cherche moins mes mots. Revised business model. This component identifies key organizational change that need to augment the positioning of the Bureau, but also looks at contracting with the private sector. The days that we were going to the lowest price and taking anything as okay are done. We have contributed in Canada to lower the price of translation because in those 5 years that I was talking about, our mechanism was say, okay, you meet the requirement, what's the lowest price we can find on these requirements? And there was no assessment of quality. Now we're building a framework to assess the quality of our supplier, and if you are a quality supplier and provide top-notch quality, you may be charging higher. When I used to hire engineers to build bridge, to build government building, I didn't look at the price alone. I looked at a combination of expertise and price, a combination of quality and price. So I was looking at 70 technical, 30 price. Why can we not do the same in translation? So we're moving away, and we're consulting right now the industry on a new contracting mechanism where we're going to associate 65% of the quote for a supplier, of the rating on the supplier, to the quality, to his performance, and only 35% of the price. So we hope by this, we will be able to increase the quality of what we receive, establish a closer relationship with the supplier at the same time. We will also ask certification that the supplier are using professional resources that are accredited either by in Canada by a provincial association ou l'Ordre des traducteurs agréés du Québec, or another provincial like l'ATIO, l'Association traducteurs interprètes de l'Ontario, so that we are guaranteed that they're helping the community of professionals, because if you look at the mandate letter my minister just received, that's what it asks us to do, increase the quality and ensure we're supporting the industry on the other side. Quality service depends also on our workforce having the right skills needed to integrate technology in their daily work. That's something we have had a hard time in the government of Canada to do in the last few years. So we want to optimize our technology for managing translation, TMS, and I know there's a few suppliers I met out there. There's an RFP coming out in June 2019, I believe. So we're going to revamp our technology to be able to be more efficient on that front, but also to have a better interaction with our supplier. And it's probably not something new in the private sector, because I'm sure a lot of companies are more efficient than the federal government. But we're moving down that path so that we can have closer links with our client. They can see where their translation, log into the system, see where their translation are, see who's translating them, if it's a supplier, who's translating them in the company who has the contract to supply them the translation, with a phone number. If they have questions, they can talk to each other. Then we're bringing the client closer to the supplier or the employee, whatever's the case. It's clear that intervention of language professional in post-edit remains critical. You may have the best, and I'm saying the best, translation system, but human intervention is still critical as far as Canadians are concerned. If you want to get the gist, it's fine. You can translate, read it, makes sense, doesn't make sense, but I haven't seen a translation engine that gives me quality. And if you try to put, we saw yesterday, yesterday morning at the opening session, some translation gone wrong. It was not in French, but I could show you a few examples in French would do exactly the same, right? Where translation through machine translation, publish, doesn't have the quality, doesn't have the meaning that we need. Renewed workforce. As the keynote speaker yesterday also highlighted at the opening session, language service provider need to invest in recruitment to attract talent and training to develop skill needed to meet the demand of web-based, e-publishing, and post-editing capacity. In Canada, educational programs have not yet aligned their curriculum with the evolution of the language industry and the language profession. Unfortunately, there's a few universities in Canada, and I can count them on my finger and even in one hand, that have evolved their curriculum, are evolving their curriculum now to include technology. I was in, and I won't name them, but I was I visited a lot of universities, and we even hired graduate from university, and I met a young lady, a fantastic young lady, 23 years old, that told me, now she's my employee, maybe unfortunately, but she told me, you know, I'm so happy to work here. I don't have to use all these tools that I don't want to use. All I want to do is translate. Give me a document, and I'll translate it. Well, you could also translate the 10 Commandments with a little hammer on a big stone. Well, that doesn't work anymore. And if that's what we teach in university, or we don't teach the student the reality of what they're going to be facing when they hit industry, they're in for a shock, they're in for a surprise. In another university I was speaking a few weeks ago, I mentioned a couple of promising neural machine translation tools that are available with some company to which we're working with to see what could be the impact of implementing them in the government of Canada. And I asked, it was about 30, 40 people, maybe 50 people in the room, and I asked, raise your hand, how many know that tool? I heard about it October, September of last year. There was not one student that raised their hand in the room. 40 to 50 students, none of them had heard about that. I don't know if I would be a student, if I would be teaching translation in university, that's one of the first things I would tell my student, right? I mean, you're going to be confronted, if you want to do an art of translating on paper, style, you know, maybe in a few years. Today, you're going to have to work with technology. You're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to learn. So our goal as the biggest employer of translator in Canada is to start working with university to upgrade their curriculum. We won't force them, but if they're willing to work with us, what are we looking for? What is the industry, working with our colleagues in industry, what are the industry is looking for, what the industry will need in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years as professional translator. So we'll start, and we have one university that expressed an interest to work with us and research on the future of the profession of translator. Because in another university I had an opportunity to speak, some students were extremely concerned. You know, they started their bachelor 3 years ago, and today they're saying, okay, is there a future for me? Beside them, there's artificial intelligence guru, and the gentleman was there in Canada that was saying, well, I'm working to put you out of a job. And, you know, so the students are saying, is there a future for us? Well, to me, there's still a future for a fairly long time, but what is it going to look like? If you don't want to do post-edition, I'm not sure there will be a future. And maybe a little niche market, but even in, I was talking about court ruling, talking about medical, you know, our memory translated, our MT, not machine translation, but translation memory, has over 4 billion words professionally translated, aligned for the government of Canada. So a lot of text that we receive go through an analyzer, and then we match these texts, and from there, you know, it's not translation every single word anymore. It's all going to be pretty soon post-edition. So we need to take our employee and your employee through that and help university to adapt their curriculum so that we have the workforce we need. And this is called, to me, working with university, it's called quality at the source. If you don't have the right employee, if they don't have the right training, you'll never get the quality you're looking for. Partnership. Quality delivery of linguistic services is a collaborative effort that includes multiple stakeholder, commitment to capacity building, client satisfaction, shared exploration of language technology, and professional best practices. As I mentioned previously, collaboration with universities is underway. We will be signing partnership agreement with most universities in Canada that have a translation program. Translation Bureau is also collaborating with professional association, other level of government, and we're consulting internationally to ensure that we're building the right quality framework that is applicable almost everywhere. Collaboration with industry through continuous communication of our initiative, development of service standard, participation in open and transparent procurement processes, and investment in quality framework. How would you like to work with us? Fabien, tu n'as pas le droit de répondre. Because I know he does a bit of work for us already, I believe. Quality, as a conclusion, quality is our ultimate goal. Are we there? Like any other, we're not fully there. But quality is not just a concept that needs to be measured against clear performance objectives and metric, client expectation, and professional advice from language expert. I'm sure you remember the words of Peter Drucker. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I know that I won't get in the polemic that there's other people that think it's not true in all this. I still believe it's true. Now, if you even add to that, you can't improve it. I'm sure somebody else also said that at some point. TB is developing a quality. We've hired the help of one of our suppliers to develop a quality definition. Because quality is a word that's been thrown around, and what is quality? Some say it's the same meaning in French and English. Some say it's the same meaning in time, at the right time. What is it? So we want to have with our supplier, with our employee, with our client, we want to have a definition of quality on which we all agree. And from there, what is the framework we're going to use to measure the quality that we're giving to our client, but also the quality that we're receiving from our supplier. So quality assurance is at the core of everything we do. For this, we have hired a chief quality officer that you may hear from her in future meetings, who's there to supervise everything we do regarding to quality, training, develop training with university, help our employee to move towards technology, adopt technology, and to help them to move really to the forefront of the translation industry in Canada. On this, I'll open it if there's a few questions. And thank you for your time. Yes. Merci.
Sure. So I know you guys are doing great in terms of official languages translation. What does this look like for Indigenous languages?
Yeah. I would say I didn't mention, we translated in approximately 100 languages at the Translation Bureau in Canada. I have people one person translate in 12 languages. And I know he's going to retire soon, and I'm really, really worried about that, because he's a fantastic human being. Indigenous languages are extremely difficult to find resources. One of our proposal to the government, first of all, there's kind of 64 to 84 Indigenous languages. Which one do you decide to translate or interpret? There's 4 or 5 that are predominant, and that's where we want to concentrate. And we have a proposal to our official to say, how can, I was talking about 1934, we helped structure the industry in Canada. How can we help structure the industry in Indigenous languages? How can we do something with Indigenous people and community so that they build their own company to be subcontractor or supplier of other company or supplier to the federal government? So in June, I'm going up in the north and trying to raise awareness, because there is a market, there is a requirement. It's a quite lucrative market on top of that, to be honest with you. It's not the, I won't say a price, but it's probably 4 or 5 times what we pay for official languages. So there's a lot of interest from the government. Yesterday we received, go ahead, Lucy.
Just to put it in perspective, in terms of volumes, 96% of what we translate or interpret is in official languages, 3% foreign languages, and 0.3% in Indigenous languages and dialects. And 100% of that we outsource. We have no capacity within the Translation Bureau for Indigenous language interpretation or translation.
So we're quite interested in supplier that have all of these capacity, and interested in building an industry of Indigenous translation, to be honest. Yes, sir?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for such a nice presentation. And actually, I'm interested in the academic aspect, being actually also not only the head of a translation company, but also a lecturer at a university. I was very pleased to find out that you do much with academia cooperation. So my question is, probably even a couple of questions. First of all, what were the hardest hits? What were the most probably serious difficulties, if you had, in cooperation with academia, challenges? How did you overcome them, if there were any? And what impresses you most of all, if anything, in modern training translators and interpreters in Canada? Thank you.
Thank you. I would say we're at the beginning of this vision, right? October, the mandate letter and all this. I'm seeing in a lot of university, the lack of, and it may not be the same in the state, but the lack of resources to buy all the different software that they need to train their student. And all that, because you can buy it from anywhere. So which one did they buy? Which one did they prepare their student to work with? And we see a lot, except a few universities that I would say are more advanced, because they're really working with an MT. And their science department is close to their translation department. But in most universities, it's the investment. The students are not ready to enter the market and to face, computers. I know, not computers, right? They're all computer literate, but they're not used to training tools. I was asked by one university, in fact, to say, could you provide, because we hired a lot of students, about 150, 200 a year, for a co-op program and all this, and one university was asking us, could you call your co-op program technology program? Because we don't have anything to give them here. So there's a little bit of disconnect. They're still teaching the philosophy, the way of translation, the brain, how the brain needs to work, but they're lacking on tools to, but that's not, but they don't want to do it. I think they're lacking the resources to do it. So it's how can we work together to make sure that maybe it is that we do a co-op program that are all technology for students. And they come through the bureau for a 3 months period, and then they would know and they would learn all kinds of technology that they'll have to work with. And I think that's the biggest issue we have. Thank you.
How your organization evaluates and measure quality?
It's good. We have multiple. We're in the midst of defining, as I said, we've hired external help to define quality. We have, how can I say, we have an older method of 400 words. If then in faute grave, how do you say that? Major error in 400 word, and 2 omission, minor grammar error, it doesn't pass the test. Well, that's old school. What we're doing now is consulting with industry, clients, academia, and association to redefine that and get an agreement of how we're going to be measuring quality of our supplier and how we're going to measure our own employee. So I would say this will be ready probably in the fall, because we started to work with the United Nations and l'Union Européenne, European Union, to see how we can incorporate the same measurement. And quality, and our colleague Strand Vic from EU was at a speaking conference with me, and for them, it's the same issue. How do we measure equally everybody, and how we treat everybody the same way? Because don't forget, I have 1,200 employees. I have to measure my employee also and measure the quality they produce. So that's what we're working on, hoping that we'll have our first phase by end of March, and we'll have a real framework agreed upon by industry association by the 30th of September.
Perhaps just a complementary point on that. So Monsieur Derry talked about the technical quality, the quality of the language, la syntax, and the correctness of the language, but there's also what we call legal quality. So does the quality of the output meet the requirements of the Official Languages Act? So can a Canadian understand what is before them equally in English and French? So we're trying to define that, and we will have a Translation Bureau definition that we want to develop with stakeholders from across the sectors, so that we are all in agreement, because it's really our biggest issue is everyone has their own definition of quality, just like everyone has their own definition of what is life. So we just want to put some rigor around a definition and then develop the framework to measure that.
Okay, so we do need to end on that note. So we're running about 10 minutes after, so we'll have to end with that. So.
Merci.